Hey guys, we are Sean and Christy. This is Long Long Honeymoon, and this week we have a fantastic topic for you, Arches National Park. Everybody talks about Yellowstone and Grand Teton and Glacier and the Grand Canyon and Yosemite and Zion. But Arches is personally one of my favorite national parks that we have visited.
It is a very unusual park just because the scenery that you see there, you really won't see anywhere else.
Yeah, when we visited Arches, I had two conflicting images in my mind. One was Fred Flintstone. And like the prehistoric past, the other was an alien landscape. So Arches is located in southern Utah, just outside of Moab.
Yes, so it's in the southeastern part of the state. It's about 119 square miles, which is a little less than 76,000 acres.
Yeah, so Arches is a relatively small national park, at least if you compare it to some place like Yellowstone. They say you can visit all of the scenic viewpoints in Arches in about 3 hours if you stop for about 10 minutes at each scenic viewpoint.
Yeah, so that would be driving the entire park road and stopping at each viewpoint for 10 minutes. Now, of course, that would be the quick and dirty way to visit Arches, I think, because you really want to get out there and explore this park. There are some really great hikes and trails to meander through, and some of them are not very strenuous at all, and then some of them are incredibly difficult.
The appeal of Arches, you might have surmised from the name, are the arches.
Yeah.
It's the largest collection, I think, of sandstone arches in the world, at least in one tightly concentrated area.
There are more than 2,000 arches within the park. Now, of course, they're counting all these tiny little small arches and ones that are very far out in the far reaches of the park. So as far as the big arches, the big wow arches, I think there's probably a dozen or so.
There are also a lot of really interesting just sandstone rock formations. And it's a lot of fun to look at these different rock formations and let your imagination run wild and try and guess what they remind you of.
Yeah, well.
If you don't think God has a sense of humor, you haven't been to Arches.
This is true.
So Arches is a really fantastic park to visit. Not the biggest park in the world, but it's one of the most special and unique. And it is so much fun hiking the various trails in Arches. And if you're into photography, it's a wonderful destination.
Yeah, and it's especially known for stargazing at night as well. There's not really much light pollution there. If you're willing to stay past dark and set up a camera, you can do some great night astrophotography. Or if you're just somebody that likes to stargaze, just put out a blanket and take in the view because it's going to be pretty spectacular.
A few tips for visiting Arches for the first time. First of all, because it is a small park, it can get crowded in terms of just getting into the park.
Yes, and right now because of pandemic, there are so many more people visiting national parks that they're kind of becoming overwhelmed. Currently, according to the Arches website and the National Park Service app, they're really recommending that you arrive before 8:30 a.m. or come later in the afternoon after 2 p.m. because if you come midday, that is when the crowds are there. And it will get to a point where the line to get into the park will spill out onto the highway and they will not let you wait in line on the highway. So they will flag you past and make you keep driving. Then you're kind of stuck. And the other reason is once they get to a certain capacity, they will stop letting people in for like 3 to 5 hours midday to sort of let the crowds dissipate a little bit. So I really suggest that you go to the Arches website and check their webcams that they have up because they have a webcam of the entrance. You can see if there's a line of people waiting to get in or not. And also make sure you check the app for information. They do alerts and that sort of thing. Plan ahead. Get there early in the morning, later in the afternoon. Personally, I think that's the way to visit anyway because midday it is so brutally hot there. And the thing about Arches that you don't really realize until you get there is there's not really any shade. There aren't really trees to give you any shade. So you've got this heat beating down on you and you've got these slick rocks that you're walking on and they sort of reflect the heat. So you're getting heat from above and below.
Yeah, a classic mistake is to go on one of those hikes in Arches and underestimate the amount of heat and not bring water. So you really need to bring water along on any hike that you're doing there.
Absolutely. They actually actually recommend a gallon per person. And having been there, I totally agree with that. A gallon per person is what you're going to need because you're just going to be sweating profusely. And they also recommend that you bring salty snacks, I guess, to help replenish your electrolytes.
Arches is located a few miles outside of Moab. It's a very easy drive. However, parking within the national park is quite limited. So if you are towing a larger RV rig or if you're in a larger motorhome, you don't really want to bring your big RV setup into Arches.
Yeah, they don't have tons of parking there, so I really wouldn't recommend bringing a big rig in. If you are somebody that you don't have a towed, like if you're in a Class A motorhome and you don't have a towed vehicle behind you to bring into the parks, there are shuttle services that you can hire in the town of Moab that will take you to trailheads and drop you off and come back and pick you up. You can go to the discovermoab.com website, and they've got links to all the providers for that in the town of Moab, and you can get details on that there.
Camping inside Arches is pretty limited from an RV standpoint. There is one campground, and it's called Satan's Playground. No.
It's
Devil's
Garden.
Sorry. So Devil's Garden Campground.
It only has 51 sites. No dump station. You've got to come prepared for that. And it books months and months in advance. They do accept reservations through October 31st, and then November through February, it's first come, first serve. Right now, I checked to see what the status is for the reservable section of this year, and it's completely booked through October 31st. No big shocker.
We drove through the campground, and naturally, we were unable to get reservations there, but I thought it looked like a spectacular place to camp.
One other quick thing about the Devil's Garden Campground. RVs can only be a max of 40 feet, and I believe that is like your combined length. So we are too large to fit in there, so you have to be fairly small to fit into that campground. Also, they only allow generators for very small windows of time, 8 to 10 a.m. or 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Just know that before you go, you're going to have that limited window of time to run a generator. They do not have hookups, and there is no dump station. They do have, I believe, vault toilets, and they do have water available there, so you can get water. It's a pretty primitive campground. It's a gorgeous setting, but a primitive campground. And once you're at that campground, it's 18 miles from the entrance of the park to the campground because it's literally at the very end of the park road in one direction. So if you're driving from that campground into Moab, expect it to take you anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes.
If you can't stay at that campground, and you probably can't, there are a lot of other places in that area where you can camp. There are a lot of privately owned campgrounds in town that are little RV parks, but also just outside Moab, there's a lot of land where you can camp for free or almost free.
Yeah, there's a lot of Bureau of Land Management campgrounds. Some of those areas are free, and some of them you do have to pay a nightly fee. Of course, they're all dry camping, but there are tons of options. So again, that discovermoab.com website is very helpful because it lists all the campgrounds, privately owned, BLM land. There's actually a national forest nearby that you could camp at as well. So it lists all those available campgrounds sort of in that Moab area.
We also recommend that you check out Campendium, either campendium.com or get the Campendium app. Campendium's great to find those Bureau of Land Management land areas where other people have camped, and you can get reviews of how the area was for them.
One other thing to note is that in the park, there is no gas station. There are no food resources.
No services.
No services, really. They do have a water spigot where you can fill water bottles at the visitor center. You can also get water at the campground. And then seasonally, they have water at the Devil's Garden trailhead. So if you're bringing in like refillable water bottles, you can refill those in those locations. But just know before you go to the park that there's no gas stations or anything. So you want to make sure you got a full tank before you head there.
So in addition to those scenic viewpoints, there are a number of really nice hikes that you can do when you're in the park. Now, I was terribly out of shape when we were there, but I think we did make the mistake of underestimating how challenging a couple of those hikes would be, especially for us, the hike to Delicate Arch.
Yeah.
Which is the most famous arch in Arches. In fact, I believe it's on all Utah license plates. It's sort of the symbol of Utah and certainly the symbol of Arches National Park. Park. It's a wonderful place to photograph after sundown. You've seen the photos 1,000 times of that arch with the Milky Way as a backdrop to the arch. So
Yes.
definitely stunning. However, you got to realize a couple things about that particular hike. You're going farther than you think up a pretty steep grade during part of the hike. There are places where it wasn't that well marked. I don't know if you remember, but we
Yeah.
kind of came out on the wrong side of this bowl. Right by Delicate Arch, there's this vast bowl, which is a lot steeper and more dangerous than you may
Very steep.
realize.
So just a quick message about Delicate Arch Trail to actually hike up to see the Delicate Arch Trail up close. It is listed as a difficult hike. Take that warning. It's a 3-mile round trip hike, but it has a 450 foot roughly elevation gain. So you're basically just hiking steadily uphill the whole way. The first half mile of the trail is very well defined. It'll be easy to follow, but after that, you're just following the little rock cairn. I'm not sure how you
cairns.
pronounce that. The little stacks of rocks. So don't mess with those stacks of rocks because they are directional. People are looking for those to follow the path. And you can miss them if you aren't paying attention. So you have to really have your eyeballs looking for those little stacks of rocks. And even then, you can miss them. It's not a straightforward path. The final 200 yards or so is along a rock ledge, and there is a very steep drop off on one side of that ledge. So if you are someone that is scared of heights, I do not recommend you do this trail because that part of the trail could be really scary for you. I also recommend that you wear rubber-soled shoes. Don't try to go in flip-flops or some little slick bottom shoe because you will fall and bust your behind. Or you could fall and die. I mean, to be quite honest.
Rather grim note, but every year it seems somebody dies on that trail.
Yeah.
They either overheat by trying to do the trail in the middle of the day during the heat and they don't bring enough water, or they slip and fall. Especially that area of that bowl next to Delicate Arch, it's a lot more steep and dangerous than it looks.
It is very steep.
And you start to realize if you fall there, you could tumble to your demise.
Yes.
And sadly, that does happen from time to time. Another issue you're going to have if you're a photographer and you want to capture Delicate Arch at night, there's no lighting up there and there's no lighting on the trail coming back. Be prepared. I guess would be the old Boy Scouts advice.
Yeah.
Bring a couple of headlamps and a good flashlight. Bring a lot of water. Just come out there ready for a challenging hike on the way back.
Headlamps are an absolute must because it will be pitch black dark. If you are going to be there for stargazing purposes and you want your eyes to adjust, they recommend you bring a red filmed flashlight. So that way you can see where you're walking, but your eyes are going to stay adjusted to the darkness so that you can see all the stars in the sky.
Now, you'll find plenty of services and resources in the town of Moab. There are plenty of great restaurants, grocery stores, and so forth.
If you plan on actually doing some hiking, I would spend several days there, at least 2 or 3 just for arches, just so that you can do the full park loop, you can do a hike here or there, and that you're not pressed for time to be on those hikes in the middle of the day, because that is when you're going to get overheated. That's when you're going to really feel the effects of that sun. So you really want to do your hikes earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon, just for comfort's sake.
And if you're mobility challenged or if you're just not a big hiker, you can see, for example, Delicate Arch from a couple of different viewpoints. Now, you're going to be a lot farther away from the arch.
Yeah.
So to that point, you might bring some binoculars with you when you go out there. And that's
Absolutely.
probably a good idea in any national park.
But there are so many other incredible arches within the park that are just a short stroll from the parking lot or that you can actually see from the road. So don't be discouraged if you're somebody that can't do that difficult hike.
So that's it, guys. A look at Arches National Park, one of my personal favorites. When you go to Arches, you're also going to not only experience the town of Moab, but there are many other parks and natural areas around there, including Canyonlands, including Dead Horse Point State Park. So there's a lot to see around Arches. So what about you guys? Have you been to Arches National Park? Did you like it? Any tips for first-time visitors coming to the area?
What did you wish you knew before you went that would have made your trip better? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family. If you haven't yet, click that subscribe button down below. It means the world to us to have you join Loloho Nation. And click that bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos get posted. And if you haven't, please sign up for our newsletter. There's a link under this video in the description box, or you can go to our website, longlonghoneymoon.com, and sign up there. I send it out usually every Monday afternoon, sometimes Tuesday mornings, and I always give a little extra info on stuff that you don't get in videos. So
this video has been sponsored by who else? Vinny's North Bay Airstream Repair. If you are in the market for ceramic coating on your Airstream or fiberglass trailer, then talk to Vinny and or Brian at Master Paint Guard, because this ceramic is sort of the hottest thing going right now, and you want to book your appointment now because they're booking out several months in advance, I think, for ceramic coatings, because everybody's getting their RV protected by ceramic.
And pretty much everybody we've heard from that's done it is just gaga for it. Airstream owners and folks with fiberglass RVs, because you're basically never going to have to wax your rig ever again. And washing it is just going to become super simple. You're saving your paint. If you're a fiberglass person, if you're an Airstream person, you're saving the chance of filiform corrosion. So there are a lot of benefits to it, and we've enjoyed ours.
Till next time, thanks for tuning in. This has been yet another episode of Long Long Honeymoon, the longest running channel about RV travel on the interwebs.
What do we say?
We say
Loloho.
Chocolate shake.
See, marriage is wonderful, guys.
He gets half of all my food.
That's right. You get half of your wife's ice cream.
How am I not skinnier? Giving away half my food.